Hey there, this is Alexis Knight. Welcome to True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. I am your host, guiding you through cases that have moved through the courts, or in this case, stalled before they even had the chance, but still left the public divided. Today's case isn't just unsolved, it's unresolved, with questions still lingering nearly 3 decades later. And now imagine this. It is Christmas night and your house is filled with the joy of the holiday season. Gifts are scattered around the living room and laughter still echoes in the halls. Everyone goes to bed with that rare sense of peace. But by morning, that peace is shattered. A child is missing and then found, brutally murdered in the basement of her own home. The story dominates headlines. The family is thrown under the microscope, and the investigation spirals into chaos. This is the story of JonBenét Ramsey, the 6-year-old pageant queen from Boulder, Colorado, whose tragic death on December 26th in 1996 shocked the world and continues to baffle investigators to this day. But this isn't just a story about what happened. This is a story about what did not happen. A family requesting DNA testing, items still untested, media spinning narratives, and the public left in the dark. In this episode, we're going to break down this case from 2 angles: the story you've been told and the facts you may not know. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Why has this case never seen a courtroom? And why even now are we still demanding answers? JonBenét's murder has been the subject of endless speculation. The media painted one picture, often implicating her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, or her brother Burke, despite a glaring lack of evidence. The investigation, bubbling over in controversy, focused heavily on the family right from the beginning. In the early days, the Boulder Police Department mishandled critical aspects of the crime scene. This is a fact. Friends and family were allowed to walk through the house, contaminating evidence. A ransom note, written in bizarre detail, was left on the staircase, but it never led to a kidnapper. JonBenét's body was found later that same day in the basement by her father John, wrapped in a blanket. DNA testing revealed unidentified male DNA on her underwear, enough to cast doubt on family involvement, but not enough to identify a suspect. Yet despite this evidence, suspicions lingered. The family's cooperation, or lack thereof, became a focal point, and the media coverage reflected that narrative. Now fast forward to today. The Ramseys have publicly called on Governor Jared Polis to push for further DNA testing. Advances in technology could test additional items that were never tested, and then retest others for a clearer profile. So why isn't this just happening? You think this would give us a great chance for a conclusion here to catch a killer. But what is holding this case back? It just never seems like it can move forward. From the moment JonBenét's body was discovered, this investigation took a very troubling turn. The initial response by law enforcement was riddled with mistakes that would haunt the case for decades. Boulder police treated the crime scene as if it were a kidnapping instead of a murder, allowing friends and family to move freely throughout the Ramsey home. Evidence was compromised almost immediately, and key protocols were ignored. JonBenét's body was found in the basement, with a garrote made from a paintbrush handle used as a weapon. The cord was tied around her neck in a way that suggested the killer had premeditated their actions. She also suffered a severe blow to the head, which investigators later determined could have caused her death, if not for strangulation. And then there was the ransom note. This was an unprecedented piece of evidence, a handwritten 3-page letter, oddly specific in its demands. The note asked for $118,000. The weird thing was, this was the exact amount of John Ramsey's recent bonus. Investigators theorized it may have been written inside the house based on paper and pen found there. But who would stage a kidnapping and leave such an elaborate note, only to murder the child and leave her body behind? While investigators initially followed standard kidnapping protocols, the discovery of JonBenét's body led them to a new suspect pool, her own family. The Ramseys quickly became the focus of the investigation, and public sympathy shifted from sympathy to suspicion as rumors swirled about Patsy Ramsey's mental state and John Ramsey's business dealings. But despite these allegations, no direct evidence ever implicated the family. In 2008, DNA testing cleared the Ramseys as suspects. The unidentified male DNA on JonBenét Ramsey's underwear and other items pointed to an intruder. Yet the stigma around the family persisted, with public opinion divided over their potential involvement. And today, as calls for new DNA testing grow louder, the focus is shifting. Why hasn't the state acted on advanced testing methods? This is one of the biggest cases. We all know it. It's been around forever, unsolved. They've made movies about it, a lot of specials about it. People know about this case, but we're just refusing to really go after it and solve it. Could the answers lie in that untested evidence? It's evidence, and it should be tested. Why are authorities reluctant to revisit this case with the modern tools that we have today? John Ramsey, this guy, the dad, has lived under the weight of public scrutiny for decades. While his grief is undeniable, the relentless focus on him and his family has painted a tragic picture. Public suspicion reached its peak during the media frenzy in the late 90s, fueled by tabloid headlines and sensationalized TV specials. Yet, the case's facts do not align with the narrative that many believe. John Ramsey was the one who found his daughter, JonBenét's body, an act that should have positioned him as a grieving father. But instead, the media outlets speculated that his discovery was too convenient, and every action he took after that was scrutinized, from his decision to hire an attorney to his composure during interviews. Over the years, John has spoken out, leading for a fair investigation. And in a 2022 statement, he demanded that untested evidence, including clothing items, fingernail scrapings, be re-examined with modern DNA technology. This was back in the 90s. And he said, "We have been living in limbo for 26 years, and it's time for answers." But despite those calls for action, the Boulder Police Department has remained largely silent. Why? The family's request for Governor Jared Polis to intervene reflects their frustration. They want help. It also highlights a broader question. Why is justice being delayed or refused almost in this case when there is so much potential evidence? As we get into this case further, let's remember that the lack of resolution isn't just about JonBenét. It's about the toll it's taken on an innocent family, vilified without cause. The decision to focus on the Ramsey family as suspects came at a critical cost to the entire investigation. While police scrutinized John and Patsy and even JonBenét's brother Burke, the possibility of an intruder faded into the background. And this narrow lens may have allowed the real perpetrator to escape justice. Evidence supporting the intruder theory, it's existed from the beginning. There was even a guy that dedicated pretty much all of his time to this case, believing in the intruder theory, and he had a lot to back it up. But all of that was overshadowed by the media narrative. A broken basement window provided a potential entry point. And, as it was pointed out, in the snow outside the house, there were no footprints. But did you know there actually is a picture showing there was no snow outside that window that night? Doesn't always snow in the city in Colorado. But the window itself had dirt smudges consistent with someone climbing through. There was also evidence of a boot print near JonBenét's body that did not match any shoes owned by the family. The unidentified DNA found on JonBenét's underwear and other items is perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence pointing to an outside suspect. No DNA that matches the family. Experts agree it likely belongs to her killer. Now, despite this, critics of the investigation argue that the early mishandling of evidence makes it difficult to rely on these findings without further testing. Another troubling detail here is the timeline of events on the night of JonBenét's murder. The family maintained they were asleep when the crime occurred. Patsy was the first to discover the ransom note early the next morning, leading to a frantic 911 call. Investigators later criticized the family's behavior during this time, questioning why John searched the house himself and why friends were allowed to come over before police secured the scene. These inconsistencies fueled suspicions, but they may have been ordinary actions of a family in shock. Over the years, experts and forensic analysts have emphasized that the family's behavior, while unconventional, does not constitute evidence of guilt. As the years passed, leads went cold, and public frustration grew. High-profile suspects emerged, including a school teacher who, very dramatically and over a very long period of time, confessed to the crime. This was in 2006, but each time there was any sort of lead, even this one, it was ruled out. This particular suspect got ruled out because the DNA on the underwear did not match. This DNA isn't semen. They are not sure what it is. But now John Ramsey stayed a suspect even though he wasn't a match. But this guy's out free. He's been working in children's schools and working with young kids around the world for a very long time. And he continues to do so. John Ramsey, still seen as a suspect. Him and his surviving family members, they continue to face relentless scrutiny, despite even their consistent pleas for more investigation, a thorough, unbiased investigation. It's all they want. Investigate more. Would a criminal do that? Sure, but he's been investigated to death. Can we just finish this investigation? Why is it still in limbo? And if the intruder theory holds weight, what does it say about the justice system's priorities? This isn't a small case. It holds national attention. It has a child involved. What else does this case need to get enough attention to be investigated all the way? This case remains a glaring example of a system where public opinion often eclipses the pursuit of the truth. Over the years, the media's focus on the Ramsey family created a narrative that became very hard to shake and still is, even as evidence came out and mounted, pointing elsewhere. The ransom note itself, this is a prime example of the complexity of this case. Linguistic experts have spent decades analyzing its contents. The phrasing and handwriting seem to suggest familiarity with the Ramseys, leading to speculation about an inside job. However, no definitive match was ever made to any family member. And the sheer length of the note was highly unusual for a ransom demand. Remember, 3 pages handwritten, left on the stairs. Forensic experts have also revisited the DNA evidence multiple times. Advances in technology since 1996 have provided more tools for analysis, but much of the evidence remains untested in this case or inadequately examined. We cannot only rely on DNA testing from the 90s. Calls for further testing have grown louder in recent years, as experts argue that retesting key items, like the long johns JonBenét wore, could provide crucial answers. We have seen this happen in so many other cases. But despite these possibilities, authorities in this case, they appear at least, hesitant to act. Critics point to bureaucratic hurdles and the desire to avoid admitting past mistakes as potential reasons for delay. And this is always what the public is left with. If they just won't do it, they must not want to. And that's really what the public is going to think here they already do. This is a high-profile case with evidence, and it's not solved. Let's test the evidence. Why is this so hard to do? The Boulder Police Department's early missteps, they left a lasting stain on this investigation as well. Reopening the case could expose these failures more, could take it further, could get people talking again. But is their image more important than JonBenét's life? Think about John Ramsey, the father. The lack of action is deeply personal. He's expressed frustration with the system. He's said, all I have ever wanted was to find out who did this to JonBenét. Why is that too much to ask? It's a question a lot of people are asking. His calls for public support in pressuring authorities to act have resonated with many who believe this case deserves a fresh look. Do you? As I close out the facts here on this case that I've covered, there is a question that lingers. We need to know, why hasn't justice been served? It's an obvious question. If DNA evidence has the potential to crack this case, why is it being ignored? The public deserves answers, that is you and me. But perhaps no one deserves them more than JonBenét's family. Can we get it done for them? Okay, now let's get into what information was out there and what really was going on with this case. So what all was the public told during all of this time about this case? So when JonBenét Ramsey's murder hit the headlines, this was in late 1996, the public was bombarded with one story: a wealthy, picture-perfect family hiding a dark secret. The media's portrayal of the Ramseys was relentless. Headlines questioned their every move, their emotions, their actions. And public opinion was shaped almost entirely by what was being fed through tabloid culture and sensationalized television specials. At the center of this narrative was the ransom note, 3 pages of bizarre demands that many were quick to label suspicious. How could a note like this be written by anyone other than someone within the house? Experts appeared on television, claiming Patsy Ramsey's handwriting bore similarities to the note, planting seeds of doubt in millions of minds. Then there was the family's behavior. Why did John get a lawyer so quickly? Why didn't Patty seem genuine in her grieving? And why was Burke seemingly so calm in the midst of this tragedy? These questions fueled a firestorm of speculation all through the media. The idea that the Ramseys were protecting someone, maybe even their son Burke, it became a dominant theory. Their son Burke, a young child still, all over the news. The lack of an intruder's footprints outside the home added fuel to the fire. If no one had entered or exited, it had to be someone inside. Media outlets focused heavily on this, portraying the house as impenetrable and the family as the only logical suspects. So the damage was done. This is everywhere immediately. The Ramseys now are not just grieving parents. They are seen now as villains in a real-life drama, cast this way all through the media. And as the public consumed this narrative, few were questioning whether it was built on any solid ground or fact, or if this was just an easy story to tell that could draw in a lot of viewers and listeners and readers. The media's focus on the ransom note extended beyond its content. Experts dissected its tone and its language, calling it theatrical and overly detailed for any sort of real kidnapping scenario. This, they argued, was proof of staging, a deliberate attempt by someone in the house to divert suspicion. Patsy Ramsey became the prime suspect in this theory. As handwriting analysis suggested, she had authored the note. The spotlight on the family intensified with revelations of their wealth and JonBenét's pageant life. Photos of the 6-year-old in makeup and costumes were splashed across every headline, and the narrative shifted to an examination of Patsy as a pageant mom. Was she overly controlling? Did she push JonBenét too hard? These questions turned public opinion even more against her. And they were just questions from the media. They were ideas being spun, painting the mother as a domineering figure capable of a cover-up. But meanwhile, John Ramsey's discovery of JonBenét's body was viewed with suspicion as well. Critics questioned why he would search the basement himself, and some even speculated that his wealth and connections allowed him to manipulate the investigation. By the time DNA evidence cleared the family in 2008, 1996 to 2008, the damage to their reputation was irreparable. The public had spent over a decade believing in their guilt, based not on hard evidence, but on a narrative alone, a narrative shaped by the media, not facts. And that's that. So now let's shift gears. If we step back from the media's portrayal and look at the facts, the picture changes drastically. Despite the family's vilification, no concrete evidence has ever implicated them in JonBenét's murder. The DNA found on her underwear in 1996, which excluded the Ramseys, remains the strongest lead pointing to an intruder. And let's talk about the ransom note. While it has been a cornerstone of suspicion against the family, no one has been able to definitively link it to Patsy Ramsey or any other family member. Handwriting analysis is not an exact science, and the FBI itself has stated that the note's unusual characteristics could point to someone outside of the family. The crime scene itself provides more evidence of an intruder, not someone in the home. The broken basement window is often dismissed because no footprints were found in the snow outside. But records do show there was little to no snow that night, meaning an intruder could have entered without leaving any tracks. And additionally, the unidentified boot print near JonBenét's body, it doesn't match anyone in the family. There was a boot there, and they can't find the boot. The garrote used in the murder also suggests a level of premeditation that would be unusual in a familial crime of passion. Experts have noted that the construction of the garrote required knowledge of knots and intent, further supporting the theory that an outside party was involved. And finally, the DNA evidence is perhaps the most compelling piece of this puzzle. Advances in technology could provide answers, but key pieces of evidence remain untested. This leaves many floored. The Ramseys have repeatedly called for these tests to be conducted, but there's no movement, and the lack of movement from authorities raises some serious questions. Why would this happen in such a big case, or any case? But this one is a case that everyone knows. It's everywhere, and it's been around a long time. The public is interested, the family's very interested, and the world knows about it. So why isn't this case being reopened with modern tools? Why is the focus still on the family, despite the evidence pointing to something else, something elsewhere? Why can't we hear about why that is? What is the reason for this? Despite the compelling evidence suggesting an intruder, the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's murder has been marred by delays and inaction, particularly concerning advanced DNA testing. John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, has been a vocal advocate for utilizing modern forensic technology to re-examine evidence. He believes that items such as JonBenét's clothing and the ligature used could yield crucial DNA profiles if tested with today's methods. However, his appeals have met with limited response from authorities. The Boulder Police Department has faced criticism for its handling of the case, both in the initial investigation and in recent years. In a statement, Police Chief Steve Redfern acknowledged that certain aspects of the original investigation could have been done better. But despite this admission, the department maintains that it's actively pursuing all leads and utilizing advanced DNA technology. They assert that the claim of ignoring viable evidence and leads, including DNA testing, is completely false. This stance, though, has led to frustration among those seeking justice for JonBenét. Advocates argue that the reluctancy to employ cutting-edge DNA testing methods, like genetic genealogy, it hampers progress, and there are items that have never been tested. John Ramsey has expressed his exasperation, stating, "All I have ever wanted was to find out who did this to JonBenét. Why is this too much to ask?" This is his question. What is the answer? And the public's patience is also wearing thin. The advancements in forensic science offer unprecedented opportunities to solve cold cases. Yet the lack of action in this particular case, it raises concerns about accountability and transparency. What is going on here? What is really being covered up? John Ramsey has opened up his life, his family. He's lost his wife. He's older now. He's still looking for answers. And I think we all want explanations. Why haven't authorities fully embraced these technologies to bring closure to a case that has haunted a family and a nation for nearly 3 decades? Every time an American hears the name JonBenét, we get a sinking feeling, right? It's unsolved. There's something icky about this case. And that's the human element in all of this. Look at the Ramsey family. They've endured unimaginable loss, compounded by years of suspicion and unanswered questions. They are suspects and they can't get any answers. It's got to be very frustrating. The pursuit of truth here is not just about solving a crime. It's about providing solace to those left in its wake and to prove to the public that justice can be done. But this one feels like there's something not right about it. I mean, in the court of public opinion, the verdict seems very clear. It's time for action. Let's get this case done. A call to complete JonBenét. The advancements in DNA technology are tools at our disposal for cases like this, and their utilization is a moral imperative. The public demands answers, and the Ramseys deserve justice. And that's it. As we come to the end of our exploration here of the JonBenét Ramsey case, it's impossible not to feel a sense of frustration, a profound sense of frustration. It's not just the lack of resolution. The frustration is also at the barriers that are standing in the way of justice. It's all right there. This isn't simply a story of a child whose life was stolen. It's not just about that now. It's a story about the systemic failures that have kept the truth buried for nearly 3 decades. And the Ramseys deserve the truth. They've lived under a cloud of suspicion for years, and if they're calling for DNA testing, they want the truth. This family has, especially John, has stayed in the same positioned by the media and this case, as if they're guilty in some way, even though there is zero evidence to say any of that, and we are getting a refusal to get any more evidence tested. This family has faced scrutiny, media vilification, public anger, a public eager to cast them as villains in a tragedy they did not cause. No evidence. And yet through it all, John Ramsey has been unwavering in his plea. He wants the evidence tested, to embrace the tools we now have, and to give JonBenét the justice she so desperately deserves. Where is her justice? Advancements in DNA technology have solved cases long thought to be unsolvable. With tools like genetic genealogy, evidence that once seemed insignificant can now provide definitive answers. So why hasn't it happened here? Why hasn't Governor Jared Polis stepped in to ensure that every piece of evidence in this case is tested? Just get it done. Why hasn't the Boulder Police Department fully embraced these methods and get it done for their sake, their city, the family? Because this isn't just about JonBenét Ramsey. This is about the message we send as a society. Are we comfortable with letting cases like this remain unsolved when we have the means to pursue the truth? That seems unacceptable. Are we willing to accept bureaucratic inertia and outdated investigative methods over available action and accountability? It's unacceptable. And the public has a role to play here. The Ramseys cannot fight this battle alone. It's up to all of us to demand better, to demand that the tools of justice actually be used to their fullest extent. JonBenét's case is a reminder that beneath every single headline out there and every narrative, there's a real family enduring real pain, waiting for answers. So let this be a call to action. Justice delayed is not justice denied, but time is running out. The evidence is there. The technology exists. And the question isn't if we can solve this case. It's whether we are willing to do what it takes to do so. Thank you for joining me in True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. Stay safe out there. Ask the difficult questions and always dig for the truth. Until next time, this is Alexis Knight.